tell us, give us some background. You mentioned Armand Hammer last night.
Yeah. Armand Hammer had 4 books published or authorized by other publishers, but he basically authorized the books, and nobody during his lifetime could basically write a book about him and live. So in other words, the only material we ever had up until his death was what he allowed to be published.
Uh-huh.
Now, his story about his family background is a complete fairy tale of very poor Jews coming out of Russia in the late 1800s, hitting the U.S. and just simply making good through hard work and diligence. But when you look at the reality after his death and the publications that have come out, you see a family dynasty of power.
A dynasty?
Absolutely. His grandfather was one of the communist agitators in Russia in the middle of the 1800s. I mean, they started in the 1860 agitating in Russia. And in the 1870s, there was a mass outflowing of these revolutionaries, and most of them came to New York. His grandfather was one of these guys who ended up in New York. His father ended up making drugs in the States and involved in the liquor trade during Prohibition, and that's where they got most of their money. They were selling it through pharmaceutical companies as medicinal medicine, and it was hard liquor they were selling. They were involved in corruption of all kinds, and they got away with it. That's the whole thing. That's what really amazes me, is that they got away with it.
They had a very strong tie to the Soviet Union.
Yeah, well, Armand Hammer's father knew Lenin very well, and Armand himself, Lenin used to call him his favorite capitalist, because Russia was importing Ford motors and medicines and so on into the country, and Hammer basically had the monopoly on the trade between the two countries, the U.S. and Russia. He was the coordinator for all incoming goods into Russia.
With the under the auspices, probably with the blessings of people in our government here in America.
Well, even in the 50s and 60s, he had politicians coming to his office. He owned apartments in the Watergate building, and Nixon was a frequent visitor. He came for advice, as did many other ones. Kissinger was another one. It's incredible that the man could literally be dancing with the communists and dancing with the so-called capitalists, which leads me to think that they're both one and the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
I think George Orwell said it right when he said it's not a war between countries. He says it's a war of the countries, the governments of the countries on the minds of their own people. And I really think that's what we've always had. So you had the Hammers and the Bronfmans doing what they did in Canada and the U.S., and then you had the Rothschilds doing exactly the same thing in Britain. They weren't poor Jews who simply made good. These guys came in with an organization and big money guys behind them. There's no doubt.
Mm-hmm.
Doors open left, right, and center for them.
And
I mean, Armand Hammer was a multimillionaire before he left university.